with us here. There's precedent for contempt charges for administration, former administration officials. What differs here, if anything at all?
Sure. So what differs is that Fauci took the Fifth Amendment, which you're legally allowed to do, I would say, whereas in the case with Steve Bannon, he simply did not show up. So showing up and taking the Fifth, I think, insulates Dr. Fauci from contempt charges. What people are missing here, I believe, is that there's something called the Separate Sovereigns Doctrine, meaning Louis Mangione is being prosecuted in a state court and in a federal court, and the Supreme Court has held that that is possible. It's not violation. It's not double jeopardy. You can be prosecuted under both a state and a federal court. So while the pardon arguably conferred immunity to Dr. Fauci on a federal level, it did not insulate him from state prosecution. Therefore, if he has a reasonable belief that he could be prosecuted in a state court, he was allowed to take the Fifth Amendment.
Because that is the argument, right? The committee is saying, or at least the head of the committee, Rand Paul, well, you were pardoned, you should have answered these questions, and yet, like you said, there's still a possibility that Anthony Fauci could be charged with state charges. However, this contempt is going to be brought to the Department of Justice, which is federal, right? So what does that look like, and is there a possibility that they could still indict him?
There's a possibility that they could indict him, but there's actually a very well-established procedure that they could have followed, and that is they offer him immunity. Congress has the power to offer someone immunity from state prosecution or use immunity. They could then get a court order to compel him to testify under this immunity, and then subpoena him and have him come to testify. And then if he refused, and then if he tried to invoke, you could say, listen, you're being offered immunity, and then you could get him for contempt. The committee did not do any of this. And then as to your direct question, the Senate won't do a vote on this. They're proposing to send this directly to the DOJ. There is some legal precedent that is not legally sufficient. This is a more cut and dry question. I think the question of, can he get in trouble for taking the Fifth, I think is a very clear no, he can't in this instance. However, can the DOJ independently investigate this? Can Congress send informally a letter without taking a vote first, or can the Senate do that? I think that's more ambiguous. I don't see any reason why the DOJ can't independently look into this, being aware of what happened publicly. So I think that's a more interesting question, but I don't think this is going to go anywhere.
Okay. I mean, look, I think we can all agree that at this point, things are very partisan as it's proceeding. And maybe this is just a charade, knowing that legally speaking, going directly to the DOJ circumvents a process that's in place for indicting when you are found in contempt, right? I think here, right, if for the American people, the reason you go on the Hill and you testify before these committees is for clarity, is for accountability, transparency. Can you compel Dr. Fauci or really anybody to tell the truth and not invoke the Fifth Amendment?
Yes, and that is by doing this procedure that Congress has done many, many, many times. There's clear law for it. You offer immunity. It's use immunity. And you say, listen, anything that you testify to can't be used against you in any state or federal court proceeding. And then when you have immunity, then you're no longer allowed to take the Fifth Amendment because you're not subject to criminal prosecution. Then after you grant that use immunity, then you go to court and you get a court order compelling him to testify. And then if he were to refuse to testify or to take the Fifth Amendment or to not show up, then you could get him for contempt legally.
Okay. So there is a process in place, and clearly that did not play out. Joseph Tully, we always appreciate your legal insight. Stay with us here on the DMV Zone. We'll be right back.